in my blood to go into architecture or, construction. When I told him I wanted to become an architect at a young age, he didn't really want me to go in architecture. He had a black suit, white shirt, tie, really clean, put together. He had his drawing tube and he had this model. If I can't be a football player, that's what I want to be, is I want to be an architect. I grew up on the Navajo Nation outside of Gallup called Ayumbato. And so I grew up there on the Navajo reservation, but I went to school off the reservation.
Yeah.
And so I went to school and graduated from Gallup High. A lot of my family members, the female members were always telling us about, getting an education and coming back, to our communities and helping out.
Yeah.
At a young age, I was really into, construction, building things by hand. Mm-hmm. And it was probably just in my blood to go into architecture or, construction or something like that. And my father, when I told him I wanted to become an architect at a young age, he didn't really want me to go in architecture.
Really?
Yeah. so I
What did he want you to do? Or expect?
Well, first,
thought
I wanted to. I feel like in high school I was more of a kind of a tomboy, right? I did a lot of sports. So, growing up, my father would always sit us in front of the TV and teach us about sports. So, I liked football. And I understood football. Yeah. So I was like, oh, I'm going to be a football player. But it's like, oh, you can't be a football player. So you watch it and it's like, oh, yeah, you don't see any females that play football. So I guess I got to scratch that off my list, right?
Yeah.
And then in elementary school, professionals day, they had, you have doctors, you got lawyers, you got nurses, you got your firemen, you got your police. And then I remember this Bilagana guy standing there. He had a black suit, white shirt, tie, really clean, put together. He had his drawing tube and he had this model. He presented himself as an architect. And I was like, if I can't be a football player, that's what I want to be, is I want to be an architect.
And how old were you?
Oh, I was in elementary school and I don't remember, but I always remember that because it was just like, if you ever see something, maybe it's something that you've seen, maybe it's a natural landscape or something, when you're small and it stays in your brain, right? Yeah. You remember something. And I always remember that. And so I was like, yeah, I want to be an architect. And then, I was told I couldn't be an architect.
Yeah.
And then I was like, well, what am I supposed to be if I can't be a football player? If I can't be an architect, then what am I supposed to be?
Yeah.
And I think really it was, the goal for me to go to school and get a degree in sociology and come back and, use my sociology degree, for my family and my community. So I started at UNM and I took sociology classes. Mm-hmm. I enjoyed them, but it wasn't something that I feel like I was being told at a young age to pick a career that, you like to do and you enjoy it. So it's not just a job. Yeah. So I would continue walking over to architecture school. So the first semester I was like, I'm going to apply. So I applied and I got into the School of Architecture, graduated with the master's degree several years later. And my path was that it was something new, like the adventure in the architecture was something new because I didn't know that there was Native architects that exist. Yeah. So I did work for a non-Native firm my first architecture career.
Oh, really?
And it was during 9/11, and they let all the interns go. And I was jobless when I was in school, and I helped start an organization at UNM called AICAE, the student chapter, American Indian Council of Architects and Engineers.
So you started that?
Yeah. So as a student, okay. And I was at a table conference, and I remember sitting there, people learning about what we do, as a student organization. Mm-hmm. And across from me, there was a lady also representing another group, and she was like, oh, you want to go into architecture? You want to be an architect? And I was like, yeah. And I just was sharing her my story about yeah, was working, but now I lost my job. And she goes, well, I know several architects. And she wrote down, and she was talking about Native American architects. And I was like, oh, so the first person on my list was David Sloan Architects.
Oh, okay.
So I called him and I said, I'm looking for a job. He says, fax your resume. So I faxed the resume, and he called me.
So that's not that long ago when all that was happening.
Yeah, and I was like, it was like right when fax were being obsolete, and it was like, I remember having to call one of my family members, and I'm like, I'm going to email you my resume, but you got to fax this because, it was hard to find a fax machine. So he got the fax, and he called me like, I think that evening, and he was like, oh, you're hired. And I worked for David Sloan for 5 years. And then it's a strange story because the office that we built, that office that we're in and we bought, that used to be his office. This office used to be his.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go walk and talk so you can kind of give me like the history version of where you used to sit.
So David this used to be his office, right?
All right, and he's retired now, right?
And he's retired, so he's
okay.
retired.
Okay.
And I remember there was cubicles, and then cubicles in this area.
Yeah.
This thing right here was crazy. Yeah. At the end of last year, we got broken into.
Oh.
And they went through the skylight.
Oh,
So, and it was when it started raining, and we had to just do something temporarily. So it's a fabulous architectural piece right now. Nice. So the skylight is actually on order, so they can replace the skylight that got broken into, and then it's hilarious.
So speaking of construction, what's the turnaround time and materials for that skylight?
It's like 8 to 10 weeks out.
Is that usually normal?
That is not normal.
What did it used to be?
It would probably be like 4 weeks.
Yep.
So, I think right now is a really strange time, especially when you're building. Materials are very scarce. Cost of it is very expensive, and a lot of our work typically on Navajo, construction costs can go from $300 to $400 per square foot. We're seeing $900 to $1,000 per square foot.
Dang, that's crazy.
So it's strange times, and I believe costs are going to just continue to go up.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we got to do something about it.
Yep.
And this back here used to be a room that was enclosed, and I remember they also would put a plotter in this.
Well, in case people don't know what a plotter is, it's a printer that plots out large drawings for design sets, construction sets, and all that.
I used to sit right here, and then they rearranged it, and then they had another partition, or a cubicle partition, and then I would sit at this desk right here too. And then this used to be like the reception area. And there was a table in here. There was like a library. It was a library. It's interesting. It was kind of like a full circle.
Yeah, right?
Of like...
Yeah. That's crazy.
Yeah, David Sloan, he, is one of the first, Navajo architects. But now he's retired. He was very successful with doing a lot of work. And then I just decided, I'm going to try something else. So I worked for another Native American architect for 5 years, and I decided I wanted to go out on my own just because I feel like
That's where you and I met.
That's where
we worked together.
We worked together, and I wanted to do something different. I wanted to do something where I had this idea about how I want to include culture as part of the architecture design, and how we can educate people about who we are, our history and our language. So that's really like our mission here at IDSA, connecting, our culture, language, and tradition through our designs. So that's where we're here, and it's like, it's been 10 years, and it's been really great to continue. And I think, I mean, I started my firm like, out of my house.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you think back, and I was like, I never got any help. I never partnered up with, non-native people, to start a business. I did it all on my own, and I figured everything out. And I didn't go to school for business, but I feel like, having that drive to succeed and have a business is probably the most important thing, because you can figure things out. You got to understand everything around how a business is run, and, profit, and, benefits for the employees. It's like, it's interesting because I feel like it's like an extension to, another family that I have, because we're so family oriented, and, we think about that as part of like how we want to grow in the future. Kanta Chapter House.
We're not surviving, we're thriving. Another female entrepreneur told me recently. Let's do this. So I made her an axe murderer style.
We were working out of my house. We would get USBs, we'd go into the garage, and we'd print the proposals.
Let's see.
So that's how we come up with our concepts, and it's really about listening to the people, rather than, I feel like in architecture school we're always taught about form follows function.